Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Manchester City are suing the Premier League. Well, this partially feels like it was inevitable. The whole kind of investigation into City's 115 charges has been well documented. I've talked about it on the channel a lot. But I wanted to look at what is really going to be discussed here. What's the main kind of issue here? City, this is unprecedented. The hearing is set to start in about 6 days, June 10th. City have described financial rules in the Premier League as, quote, tyranny of the majority. And there's a lot to consider here because this is going to impact how Newcastle are, going to approach their financial operations at the club, how they're going to operate with transfers and arrivals and departures. But with City, there is a lot of little weird details to this to kind of parse through because it could get kind of tricky. 115 charges is a lot. I'm not going to sit here and go through all 115 charges, but I do want to kind of jump to the ESPN article here, which is basically putting the focus on the Premier League's ATP rules. ATP rules are Premier League's associated party transaction rules. ATP, I guess they have it switched here twice. You can see APT there and then ATP. So I'm unsure exactly what the acronym is. Long story short, these rules are effectively barring any sort of owners from directly sponsoring, the club. So in some examples that have taken place in Premier League history, you could look at, Mike Ashley at Newcastle, Sports Direct Stadium for St. James Park, or the Stand or whatever it was. Stupid, really the dumbest one. I never liked that one personally. But then you could start kind of bringing into question the allegations around City, UEFA, the CAS arbitration that ended up getting overturned, the appeal for City. That's really what a lot of City fans have been pointing to as like, well, we're innocent because, UEFA didn't get us, Premier League won't get us. But these are two separate cases. And that's kind of the key issue here for City. Ultimately, I just want this to be resolved as quickly as possible, ideally before the new season. Regardless of if City is found guilty or not guilty, just get it done because I don't like the points deductions that like we saw Forest and Everton get, and now Leicester City could possibly get it. Sheffield is getting a points deduction, I believe, once they're back in the championship next season. I believe it's Sheffield. It might be one of the other relegated sides, but this is about UEFA's decision to suspend City from European competitions for 2 years in 2020. That never came to fruition. That never materialized because of a lengthy appeal process the City took up with the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Europe against UEFA. The probe apparently was going to be in, context to this allegation that City have disguised sponsorship money. Well, they have allegedly kind of obfuscated and muddied the waters as to how the sponsorship money is coming to fruition, in the sense of like the club is basically getting sponsorship money from themselves is what the allegation was. That City had some kind of shell company. I believe it was Etisalat was the name of the company that was giving City a 30 mil sponsorship offer, but apparently it was just the shell company. And allegedly, I should say, not apparently, allegedly it was just the shell company that was there to funnel money into City's books, really, directly from themselves in a wholly, in their eyes, kind of by the book way. But in the eyes of the Premier League and UEFA, it seems that this is kind of like a bit of a, how do I say it? They see it as a violation of the rules, and City are seeing this as not a violation of the rules. They're seeing it as, their kind of workaround to these, what did they call it? Tyrannical rules for the majority. So, let's track back a bit because this is the article that broke today, that City have launched legal action. There's rumors about this all the way back in, I believe, February, that, the 20 teams were notified that one of the teams is considering legal action based on these rules. Newcastle have had to kind of tighten their financial purse to not necessarily find themselves in a disadvantageous position down the line, because the nature of the financial ongoings in the Premier League is ever shifting. So ultimately, City are accusing the Premier League of a discrimination against golf ownership, suing for damages, first published by the Times. You know, this feels like a very, very kind of wild ploy to me. So it seems to me what is happening. Effectively, these APT rules are gonna be put up to arbitration because City see them as, unlawful, unfair, whatever it might be. They're also accusing of golf ownership discrimination. They're accusing the Premier League of that. So effectively, they're trying to build this case of, hey, we've owned the club since 2008. We've invested in the club. And now, only now, really, when another Gulf state comes in to own a club and start to operate, i.e. Newcastle, you basically start tightening, the means of, investment. You start kind of tying their hands so that they can't progress up into the top six, and so they can't kind of, have a meaningful approach to competing in the league, which is an interesting argument. But at the same time, let us not forget this Der Spiegel kind of, report that has existed for a while now. This is just kind of a look back really quick. So Der Spiegel had effectively said that City had three main things that the Premier League were focusing on, and that was separate from the UEFA CAS arbitration that was mentioned earlier. Effectively, the CAS arbitration was this whole sponsorship funneling money thing, but the Premier League is approaching it from a slightly different angle. The rule for the APT, this associated party transaction rule, is being put in place so that that doesn't happen. Now, it's weird to me because according to this Der Spiegel article, which never ended up causing Der Spiegel to get sued and never ended up leading to Der Spiegel retracting the claims. So City have never gone on the aggressive for these claims because Der Spiegel is very reputable, very kind of journalistically this is going to sound like a weird way of saying it. They have journalistic integrity. I don't know why I'm talking like that. But regardless, it seems that City are using this lawsuit that they are putting forward towards the Premier League and against the Premier League as a counter to these three claims. That's what that's the picture I'm seeing right now. All of this is alleged from the Premier League towards City. It's all being investigated, and ultimately we don't know the truth. But what we do know that is maybe true and very likely true based on just the fact that this Der Spiegel article is still out there. It's not been taken down to this date. It ended up leading, City never sued specifically Der Spiegel and claimed any sort of defamation. So there's got to be some kind of, if there's smoke, there's fire. So the three claims were that City signed underage players in violations of the rules, hid payments to former clubs via contracts with their agents. As mentioned, Sheikh Mansour channeled additional funding to City via the company he used to buy the club and their Abu Dhabi-based sponsors. And former manager Roberto Mancini, now in charge of the Italian national team, was paid a chunk of his total salary via a spurious consultancy contract with Al Jazeera Sheikh Mansour's club in Abu Dhabi. So, effectively, what I'm gaining from this is that City have taken the offensive to the Premier League at this point. There's no other way to put it. City believe that these allegations are baseless. They think it's also unfair. So, which is really weird. I want to just take a step back. To me, this really just seems stupid. I'm going to be entirely honest. I know I'm a Liverpool fan and I don't want to be biased. But if your logic is, first, we did nothing wrong, so we're going to sue you because these new rules are about to be, unfair towards, golf ownership, because if an owner can't invest as a sponsor, then you can't compete, is effectively what they're fighting what City is fighting this APT rules battle on, so City is claiming without the ability for golf ownership to be able to go and, have a direct kind of ability to invest in the club and bring in sponsors that they see fit, we're unable to compete and we wouldn't have been able to reach the heights we did. Therefore, that's unfair. And it seems like that's one of the first kind of steps they're taking to build a defense against this. Ultimately, I don't know, there's 67 pages of emails. Everything I've said in this video is kind of just generally speculation on my end, but this is the info we have. And we will find out within the next week or so, as maybe not exactly within the week, within the next couple of weeks, as the trial unfolds. It's set to start in 6 days. This just feels like City are trying to either delay or kind of soften the blow. It doesn't feel like this is a really strong argument to make. If there really was discrimination against golf ownership, I would imagine that the Premier League's fangs come in far earlier. I don't think that it would necessarily be like, obviously there was some conversation about blocking Saudi Arabia from owning Newcastle, but that never ended up coming to fruition. And admittedly, while Newcastle they are facing some financial kind of hurdles down the line in the way that the Premier League is now starting to kind of adjust its focus and set its terms for the financial bounds of the league, or kind of reorient them a bit. The thing I'd say to City is, it's not really the golf ownership thing as much as it seems to be, hey, here's a club with really a way, way, way higher amount of wealth, like a huge disparity in the gap of wealth compared to the rest of the league. That happened once with City. And just because, the club that's coming in, or the ownership that's coming in, is a golf state, I don't think that necessarily matters here, because whoever comes into the Premier League, even Chelsea are facing scrutiny. Chelsea are owned by an American venture capitalist firm. So if Chelsea is about to start facing some, certain situations that might be a little tense financially, and City, Newcastle are too, I don't think that's necessarily I don't think that's discrimination. I think that's just City not City. I think that's the Premier League just kind of starting to see the writing on the wall for what it was and being like, all right, we have to do something, because now it's getting totally unsustainable. I mean, every single club in the Premier League, for the most part, besides, I guess, Brighton and a few other clubs, lose money. So if you're losing money year on year and you just it's just like a gluttonous beast that can't be satiated. So I could see where the Premier League's coming from. I could also kind of see where City's coming from. But at the same time, I'm leaning towards believing that City's argument's going to have a lot less legs in court unless they could really prove that this is a concerted effort just against Newcastle and City. As of right now, to me, it seems like a concerted effort against the most kind of, spend happy Premier League clubs. Chelsea, Newcastle. Newcastle situation's different. I wouldn't say they're spend happy. I think they've just been mismanaged for so long that's just rearing its ugly head. But really, Chelsea and City are the ones to watch out for in terms of that. So that argument of trying to go for Newcastle, a bit weaker, I think, than what I think is going to end up happening and being the reality, because I don't think the Premier League is going to try to lump you in with Newcastle. I think that City is just kind of projecting her a bit. I think they're like, hey, maybe if we go with this argument, we could kind of hit a different angle here and change the narrative. Nope. I don't think the Premier League's going to let that happen, because it seems like what's happening with City will be closer to something that is more in line with Chelsea's kind of group of problems, so to speak, as opposed to Newcastle's, because Newcastle at the end of the day have really only kind of been put in this position because they have such horrible players they can't sell on. So they just haven't been able to balance the books for FFP and for PSR. That's a totally kind of different argument and conversation than what is happening with City and Chelsea. City's is the most kind of unique case. Chelsea a bit closer to City's, but at the end of the day, Chelsea's just kind of spending themselves into the hole. And Newcastle just are in a weird spot, like because of just technicalities, I think. So all three are ultimately different. I feel like City's just kind of throwing a Hail Mary here, hoping to delay this way past maybe next season, however far they can. But I do think the Premier League means business. They wouldn't take so long. They wouldn't levy so many charges. There wouldn't be so much talk and so much kind of patience if they weren't serious about this. But let me know what you think. It's an absolute kind of huge story. I don't know if any club of City's stature has ever directly sued the Premier League and won majorly. But this could be interesting precedent nonetheless. Thank you so much for watching. Comment down below. Let me know what you think of all the news that's coming out of this. Let me know what you think will happen with City. Do you think they're going to be charged? Do you think they're going to get off scot-free? As always, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Like the video if you enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Sideline Sedo. Peace.